Hello, today we're back at Lang Equipment and we're going to talk about steps you can do to prepare your tractor and your lawnmower for the winter months. So we're back here with Nate Lang, who is the owner of Lang Equipment, and he's going to talk a little bit about what he hears back and forth from customers, what they're worried about, what they actually need to be concerned about, and what you have to do, if anything, in some cases, to prepare your tractor for those long winter months. So Nate, what is the foremost question you hear from people in fall?
In fall, people are talking about storage of the mowers first and foremost, and then people are talking about getting their tractors ready for the Wisconsin weather, getting them ready for use. Other people are leaving, they're going on vacation. They just want to store it over winter. So you got to take different steps for if you're going to store or if you're going to use it.
So in Wisconsin, or much of the Midwest, Northeast, northern part of the United States, people might be using your compact tractors for plowing snow or different things like that. In that case, it's probably not going to matter a ton. There's still going to be some things they need to do, but they might not do the same things that someone who's going to store their tractor and leave it sit when they go down to Florida and then come back in spring and want to be able to turn the key on their tractor and pick up right where they left off. So one thing I hear a lot about is fuel additives, especially with biofuels, so ethanol and biodiesel.
Yes.
Should you be putting a fuel additive in your tractor if you're going to be using it less in winter or possibly storing it?
Fuel additives will help with making them easier starting on some types of additives. Other ones are going to help with the algae growth that you can get on the diesels. I always suggest not using ethanol in any of your lawnmowers, of course. If you're going to be storing a lawnmower, make sure that you take and get rid of all the fuel in the carburetor. So drop it out of your tanks, or some people will use an additive to store it, but the best thing you can do if it has ethanol is get rid of it so that that ethanol is not in the tank and not in the carburetor. But additives are huge. They will help protect, especially in a diesel tractor. Is what you want to do is you want something that's going to stop the algae from growing. And even like they'll have a cetane boost. You might know more about that, but getting that easier starting with cetane boost for a diesel in the winter is a good thing. Is what it does is it allows it to ignite or at a lower temperature.
So it's going to start easier, it's going to run smoother. And that's important in winter because it's not the same situation that you have in summer. Your air is much colder, your fuel is going to be cooler, it's not going to ignite or have that combustion readiness that you might have compared to a summer one. And a lot of fuel additives now, you want to look for multifunction. You want good lubricity, you want a stabilizer. So most people don't know this, but fuel actually does age. So it oxidizes. You think about it like rusting for your fuel system. As oxygen is exposed to your fuel, it oxidizes and it loses some of its combustion ability, its cetane and different things. And you mentioned ethanol, which is a great point to make, because what most people don't realize is ethanol is a water sink. We call it a water sink because the minute it's exposed to air, it pulls in water, just like any alcohol would. So if your tractor's sitting for a long period of time or your mower's sitting for a long period of time and that ethanol sitting in there, it's going to pull in moisture. It might pull in moisture from the air if you have like a vented fuel cap or different things like that. If it's sitting in your carburetor, it's going to pull in some of the moisture that's just available. There might be kind of condensation from temperature changes, which is very important in winter. And then with that oxidation, you're going to have what they call varnishing. So with ethanol, you actually get like a thin glaze, if you would, over some of your fuel system components, which is going to limit their functionality and actually decrease their lifespan. So definitely if you have ethanol, you should be using a fuel stabilizer. And diesel fuel, like Nate had mentioned, you got to worry about algae growth, especially with biofuel, biodiesel. So that's another important thing to have in your fuel, especially if it's going to be stored. And then, if it's going to be used, if your tractor is going to be used in the winter months, make sure you have an anti-gel as well. Just because when you need to get out of your driveway to go to work in the morning, you don't want to be out stuck in your driveway with your tractor because your diesel fuel gelled, and now you can't move your tractor, you can't get out to get a fuel filter or anything like that. Apart from that, another thing we hear a lot about is lubrication. So if your tractor is going to sit, you should probably go out and grease it and just make sure that all the fittings.
Make sure you get all the fittings, make sure that they're greased well so that there is no moisture that gets in there, especially if you're going to be changing between a bucket and forks or anything like that, making sure that all those joints are well lubricated, all the moisture is out. Speaking of anti-gels, the other important thing is antifreeze. Checking to make sure that not only that it is antifreeze, some people, I had a gentleman buy a skid steer from down south and he brought it up. He ended up with a really heavy repair bill because there was just straight water in his radiator and it circulates through your engine into the water jackets. Check that antifreeze. Antifreeze is cheap. Repair is not.
So in that case, that gentleman actually, he's from the Midwest, from Wisconsin.
Yes.
And he bought this from down south where they just use water as a coolant. They don't have to worry about the actual coolant freezing. And he bought it down there online or something, brought it up here, and in winter that froze and he ended up replacing the entire engine.
Yeah, he bought it right before the end of the year. Came up here on a semi in January. It must have gotten here because he bought it December 31st on an auction. Got up here in winter. He had it a little bit over a week before he got the nasty repair bill. And that's a big problem up here. So making sure that your coolant level, not only that it's coolant, but the coolant is good. It's like fuels. They age, and you need to have a coolant that protects to 30 below, 40 below.
Yeah, depending on where you're at. So it's relatively easy to check. You can, a lot of times your local repair shops can, loan you a tool, or they'll sell you a pretty cheap little tool. And all you do is you take a sample of it, of your coolant, and it says, this is good. It's going to freeze at
10 below, 20 below. It'll give you a really easy indicator on there to tell you how low it will go before it freezes.
Yeah, how low can you go? So that's obviously very important, because even if you have to buy that tester, say it's $15, $20, it could save you a catastrophic failure anywhere on your tractor. And mowers don't have coolant; they're two-stroke, most of them.
They're four-stroke, but they won't have, everything is pretty much gone to air-cooled now.
Yep.
There are some that do have coolant in them, and of course we want to check that coolant also before winter. If you're going to store your stuff, make sure that you protect it from the mice too. Around Wisconsin, we have that issue.
Yeah, nobody likes the cold, even the critters. They start moving in right away. So another thing we hear about is tires.
Yes, making sure that your air pressure is set in them. You can go based on the sidewalls. It's going to have your tire pressure range on the side. Just stay within that. Rear and front. Some guys will run a little bit lower pressure. They feel that it gives a little bit of extra
traction,
a little bit more comfortable ride. Don't go too low, because you can, obviously with the temperature changing, you're going to lose pressure. As the temperature rises, you're going to go up in pressure. If you go too low, then your sidewall start to leak a little bit, and then you got a tire that's off the rim.
And what we notice in winter is, so if you go in and you have your tire set at a normal temperature, it might be around 20 psi on a compact tractor.
Yeah, just depending. Some guys will run a little heavier in that 40. Some guys will even run in 40, but a lot of people run in that 20 to 30.
So what happens in winter is your air gets cooler, constricts. And so your tire pressure is going to go down, your tire is going to squat, and you're going to see that little bubble on the bottom of your tire. And what happens there is that rubber stress, so your tire gets cracks in it rather, and over time, it might be 1 winter, 2 winters, 3 winters, you can develop little small leaks in your sidewall. So it's real important to keep that tire pumped up so it doesn't have a big bubble down in the bottom of the tire, and it's going to keep your sidewalls intact. And hopefully you don't have to be buying tires every 3-4 years. So outside of that, Nate, I hear some people saying that you should put a lubricant on your PTO shaft. Most of them come with a lubricant on them, but if you're getting a lot of use switching implements back and forth, it might be a good idea to spray something on there just to prevent any rust.
Yeah. I suggest silicone lubricants personally. There's different products that you can get. Some guys will use WD-40. I like the silicone sprays myself.
Yeah, yeah. What you should probably watch for there if you're going to spray something on, don't use a penetrating oil or something that's going to evaporate very quickly. You
Correct.
want a lubricant that's going to hang on there and not evaporate, not
Yep.
oxidate.
A lot of guys on a drive shaft, they'll even take grease and just go straight grease.
Yep.
So there's different ways of doing it, but just making sure you got something on there makes it easier for changing your implements, especially if you're going to be having a snowblower on there all winter. Mm-hmm. And if you don't put anything on there, wet, they take it inside, it dries out. Cold, if they take it outside, they get snow all over it, it gets hot because it's running. So you get a lot of condensation on there, which leads to rust if you don't have it lubricated. So get it lubricated, because when you want to switch to your tiller come spring, having that stuck on there isn't very nice.
And there's nothing more aggravating than trying to get a PTO shaft on. Anyway, typically you get a little greasy when you do that to begin with, and if you got to fight back and forth with that to try to get it on because there's any rust on there, it's only going to make that process harder and more aggravating on you. PTO shaft should slide on, slide off, and with a little pre-maintenance, as I would call it, it should keep that continuing for the life of the tractor. So, Nate, is there anything else you can think of between mowers? I mean, obviously you probably just want to spray these off with a mower especially, or a tractor, spray them off anywhere where there'd be some lawn clippings or some dust. There's always that chance that there's going to be moisture there, and over time that's going to rust.
Yes.
So it doesn't hurt to go through, blow these off, wash them. I know they don't recommend like spraying a lot of water on them going into winter because you actually get water in a lot of those bearings. And if you do spray off your tractor or your mower, make sure you just go in and grease it to get that water pushed out of any of your bearings or your bushings.
Last thing that I do is grease. I grease after. You can do it very clean, you know,
Yep.
if you do it afterwards. Otherwise, a lot of times people will grease and then they want to wash it off right away, and you're just getting water back in there. A lot of guys will take a pressure washer to it and they'll just ram a whole bunch of water into what they just greased, you know, so you're defeating the purpose.
Yeah, it's things like that we always don't think of when
No.
we're doing it. It's like you want your tractor, your mower to look pretty when you put it away. You don't want a big slob of grease hanging down the side. So yeah, if you spray it off and then you go through and you grease it, you shouldn't have that grease hanging out all over, and you don't have to worry about blasting water into that fitting.
Correct.
That makes good sense. Well, Nate, thank you. It's always informative coming over here and learning what we should be doing. I know this is a new topic for a lot of people, but even somebody like myself who's been around tractors and equipment, you know, these aren't things we always think of.
It's just a little reminder.
Yeah,
You know?
it's stuff we should be doing, and sometimes it's just that little piece of advice that could save you thousands or tens of thousands of dollars down the road. You know, like you said with the radiator, if you buy something down south, it might not be lubricated, or the coolant might not be to the spec that it has to be for up here. So
Yes.
that's a great tip.
You get a lot of different variations, even from southern Wisconsin to northern Wisconsin. There's a big difference, you know, in the number of mowing days that we get even. You had asked earlier about the lawnmowers, you know, just make sure that you get the bottoms of those decks cleaned out. That's another really big one, because that grass under there, it retains moisture, and you will get a lot of rust underneath your deck. So,
And that's just going to make it more cumbersome because the grass isn't going to flow out of there if that's rusted. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's a great tip as well. Make sure you guys leave your comments down in the comment section. If you have questions, comments, let us know. We keep making these videos around what you guys bring us. So questions you have, we try to answer them. Any comments, let us know. And thanks for tuning in.
thank you.